we didn't know what we were doing, right? And I say this often is like, don't build the airplane while it's on the runway. That's all we did. We were just building, hoping the thing would get off the ground.
I think a behavior analyst mind and an engineering mind are a lot more similar than I ever thought that they were.
Yep.
And so that's really come into play. And I think that's where like things at 3Pi2, we are able to really build off of those common strengths that those two fields have on each other. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AByay Business Leaders Podcast, brought to you by 3Pi2. I'm April.
I'm Steven.
And today we have a very special, fun Valentine's episode for everyone. We have with us either we have some couples with us or representation of the couple. One of the couple, I don't know, with us today to talk about what it is like to be in business together and be partners in life together. Listeners, if you've been here for any amount of time, you know that Steven and I are a married couple, and we were that role before we became working partners, and this is our second business that we've worked in together. And probably in total, we started working together in 11 years ago?
Yeah, like 2012-ish, around there somewhere.
Yeah, so our favorite story to tell is we had relocated to Northern Virginia, and from South Carolina. We didn't have any family near us. We had decided to start AByay company. It was before insurance mandates. It was like way back. It feels like so long ago. And we just started it. We were just like willy-nilly, let's do this thing, right?
Yep.
And then Steven was kind of helping. He was a full-time engineer. And then he was helping like on the side, like trying to do like the business end of things so that I didn't completely run it to the ground, because I was completely giving out services for free. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, oh, the sob store. I don't want to ask them for money. Mm-hmm. It really seemed like a babysitting biz, not in the sense of how I was helping the families and providing the services, but just in the lacks, like just the lack of professionalism on the business end of things, because I didn't know what I was doing. So Steven hopped in, he helped, and things really started picking up and running. We hired our first, started hiring our staff. And about that time, insurance mandates did start trickling in. And so we built a nest egg, and Steven quit his full-time job with benefits and paid time off and all the things. And then a week later, we found out our son Willis was on the way. We were expecting. And so we were like, what in the world are we doing? And so we were running our business out of our house with a, newborn, and we were doing payroll. I was nursing Willis. He was 2 days old or 3 days. Yeah. We were the day we got home from the hospital, and we were doing payroll
and insurance
bill, because we're trying to figure all the things out. Yeah. I'm sure things that you guys can't understand, right? So that's our story. But so I wanted to welcome to the conversation Jessica and Josh, Chris and Jess, and Tasneem, and she's here representing her and her husband. And there are two other couples who are really interested in joining us today, but they couldn't make it. And I told Steven, I was like, isn't that the truth for business owners and partners in life, that it's very rare that the two of you can be in the same place at the same time? It's just a really hard thing. So anyways, I just wanted to welcome you guys to this conversation. And if you would like to share your story, your origin story, you're more than welcome to.
We can start. Josh and I have known each other since high school. We started dating early on in college and have done a lot of life together. And so I think that has set us up for a lot of success, but also a lot of struggle, in that we've just known each other for so long. We were originally in completely different fields, different careers. Most of my career was in education. I didn't actually go into AByay until 2020, and he was in business and finance. And we had really different schedules. And so that was really hard for us as a family a lot of times. And then in 2020, I went into AByay. Fast forward to 2022, we ended up moving to the coast, about an hour and a half away from all of our family. and opened up an ABA clinic. And we went into it completely blind, had no idea what we were doing. So I'm excited to get to share some of the things today with the successes, the struggles, what we've learned along the way. But that's pretty much our story.
I had a BCBA, and Jess has counseling background, and Pennsylvania is a little weird, and we're both basically working similar jobs, working with kids with autism when we met. So we're both clinicians, and starting the business, and we actually got married in 2018 and then started the business in 2019. So not a lot of separation there. And when we initially started the business, we were both working. So we were doing a lot of work on the weekends, setting up policies and documents, and set up the website. The website says, set up a website in 20 minutes. And that ended up being 3 12-hour days and taking up our whole weekend. And then Jess was still working for a few months after we started the business. Business really took off. And less than 6 months later, I'm begging Jess for help. And she said, okay, I'll quit my job. We'll both work on the business. And Jess was like, what do you need the most help with? And I was like, HR. I need help with HR. Things are stacking up, and doing interviews and keeping everything straight is the biggest time suck that I have. So Jess jumped in with HR and ran that for a couple of years, and then hired a couple of staff and trained them. And then 14 months ago, we had a baby, so we both stepped back, and Jess really stepped back. And now we have a 14-month-old and a business.
There you go.
I'm just starting to step back in too. So that's an interesting transition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd love to circle back to that later, because it's a real thing.
Okay. So obviously, my husband, John, he's not here right now. That's because he is currently working right now. We're actually brand new to this. So everybody else here has a lot more experience than we do. I met my husband a little over a decade ago. And then really when we got married, there was a lot of life going on. And so since then, we've always had to act as partners, because we've had a lot of hurdles to get over during, there's been no, oh yeah, let's kick back time in our marriage yet. So, but we've really managed it very well. And he's been a great support and a great leader in that. I got into the AByay field in 2016, not long after our youngest son was born. And I loved it. I loved working in the field. And then as I got closer to getting my BCBA, which I got certified in, at the end of 2021, so December, I really started thinking about that I wanted to own my own practice, but didn't really know how to do that. Also, we kind of needed to be on the same page with that. And then after I graduated with my doctorate, we had a long conversation where we're just like, okay, you know what, let's do it. He is not in the AByay field. He is a regional manager for car wash, has been doing that for many, many years. And through that, he gained a lot of experience in business. He knows a lot more about business and HR and all those things than I do, which is great, because right now, as I was trying to get things together and write in policies, I didn't know anything. And he was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to do the business side of this with you. And you can do, he's like, clinical, clinical really well. And I know business, and we can do those things together, which was great, because I'm actually with you, April. The first two clients that I had, pro bono. Because I didn't even have the right insurance for them yet, because we didn't have a location. And to get Medicaid and Blue Cross Blue Shield, you had to have a physical space. I didn't have that, but they had Medicaid. And what was I going to say? No, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. Of course not. And so, my husband, he said, okay, I see that you have 2 pro bono clients. We cannot do more than that. You're going to go under. But he's done really well. We actually just entered into a partnership with a therapy center that provides OT and speech therapy as well. And so we're going to have a little bit of a space with them. And when he came into that meeting, when my husband came to that meeting with me, he really, really helped out a lot, because there was questions that I didn't know how to even ask, and I didn't even know how to answer some things, and he was right there. So now we're in the process of applying for those insurances. And so we'll be very soon onboarding our first clients, paid clients. So we're very excited.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that we have different stages of this journey represented today. I think that's really great how that turned out. So when you guys came together in business, what surprised you the most?
So of all the years that I've worked in the field, and, sometimes you come home and you talk about things, or you talk about things that you're doing, and, just methods and things that you're learning. And sometimes you think, oh man, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about right now. And sometimes because what we do or what we did was so different, it's almost like, oh, he's probably going to tune out, or he's not really listening. I was surprised to find out that he actually has listened all of this time, and he knows a lot about what I do, and he knows how to articulate it in words that is even better than I can, which is phenomenal. So that really surprised me that he knew that much about it.
Anyone else?
I'm surprised at how well we get along in business.
Okay.
Josh and I are complete opposites. He is very introverted, very quiet. We'll see how much he actually talks on this today. But I'm very extroverted. I could talk all day to anybody, anywhere. And so my concern was that because we are such opposites and we are bringing two different perspectives into one business, I was concerned that there would be more difficulty there. But I think because we have such complementary skills for something like this, that I was really surprised at how well we get along. I don't think anybody thought we would get along as well as we do, because we are such opposite people.
That's really great. I can't say that. Now I can.
But we don't necessarily, we still have our moments.
Yeah.
I think it's to be expected, and it's helpful. Right. It helps you, get through problems coming from different perspectives. But I would agree that when you have those two separate, careers going on, the schedules that rarely lined up. In our case, at best we had 1 day a week together. Mm-hmm. So I think that was, just, we didn't anticipate actually having more family time. We work, it seems like more, but when we reflect on it, we actually have a lot more time together. We have more time with kids. So I don't, surely going into business, you don't expect necessarily to have that. You don't expect to have more time. So I feel like we work more, but we have more time somehow.
I love that. Yes, it does. It comes with some freedoms and some flexibility for sure. It comes with a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of figuring it out in the beginning, especially, but it does. There are some freedoms along with that.
I think how well our backgrounds in philosophies have mixed to create something successful, because I got my BCBA over 15 years ago, and it's slightly different than it is now. And when we first met, we were debating about counseling techniques versus the environment and all kinds of stuff. And now I'm when we have this conversation with this person, we really need to focus on listening to what they're saying and reflecting and validating their experience. It's worked out well for us.
Yeah, we used to like when we were dating, like we'd have these debates about like, behavior versus counseling approaches, like just healthy, fun little, oh, well, this is how I see it and this is how you see it. And to see how that actually just kind of came together and like filled in the gaps for each other has been awesome, but surprising.
I don't know if this is surprised or I'm grateful that even though we didn't know it, our values were aligned enough that we were able to manage a company, because we didn't know what we were doing, right? And I say this often is like, don't build the airplane while it's on the runway. That's all we did. We were just building, hoping the thing would get off the ground, right? And there was a lot of stress and there was a lot of hard-headedness, in my opinion, on both sides, right? And so this was not as easy as this time around, right?
Yes.
Building the second business has been much easier and much more satisfying and enjoyable. But that first one, oh man, it was tough.
Well, we have a lot more skills now that we learned that first.
100%. 100%. I was a child, right? Like I was a man child.
Yeah. I think the biggest surprise was that we made it through the first year.
Yeah. And the second year and the third year.
But that first year was really hard. It really was. I mean, we didn't have family nearby. We were, also learning how to parent together, which was another story we could do another podcast on. And how to run this company together. And it's not that we were even both like clinicians or, we haven't, although, I must say, I think a behavior analyst mind and an engineering mind are a lot more similar than I ever thought that they were.
Yep.
And so that's really come into play. And I think that's where like things at 3Pi2, we are able to really build off of those common strengths that those two fields have on each other. Now that we're both focused more on that, and I'm less focused on like our clinical end. Cause I think that was some of the difficulty was, bridging that, clinical piece for me, trying to stand firm in a few things that, meant a lot to me that I didn't want to shift on, but then looking at the business model of things that we really did need to shift on that. So I wonder with you guys, did you have any, or are you experiencing any, or have in the past any like disagreements between like clinical and operational? And I know like Chris and Jess, you have the clinical background too, but a different, like you were just saying, different philosophy. And I know, so I'm just curious, have you guys hit that yet? And if so, how did you handle it?
I know Stephen mentioned values, and as we were reflecting on some of the topics for the podcast, we realized that we don't have a lot of conflict around the business or disagreement around the business. And looking back, I think that's because we were both working somewhere where we were overworked and everyone was overstressed, and there weren't a lot of resources, and kids weren't making the progress that they could have been making. And we both had that experience. And we both have the same values and we both have the same goals. We just want to do a good job. And it makes it easy to make decisions when we're on the same page like that.
That's what we were brainstorming as well. Just to piggyback off of that, is there haven't been a lot of conflicts that we've had, and we attribute that to our mission and our values are aligned. And so we kind of brought the same thing to the table of these are our experiences in our previous employment, whether it was good or bad. I mean, we had a mixture of both. But these are our experiences. These are what we want to make sure our organization values. And we were on the same page as that. So even when conflicts do happen, which are typically pretty minor, we bring it back to what are our values and how does this decision align with what we want for our company. And it usually is something financial, whether it's budget cuts or, staffing on the clinical side versus staffing on the admin side, and trying to find that balance there. But even with that, I guess that almost is kind of a surprising thing too, is that we haven't had those conflicts in business that we really had to overcome, at least not in the 3 years that we've been in operation?
I wish I could say, oh, we don't really have as much conflict, right? Especially starting off, we're brand new. We've already had a few disagreements, but fortunately for us, we're able to talk through them really well. And I think it's just because, sometimes I can really be kind of driven by what I think like long term, but not thinking about the short steps in between. And so my husband, he really thinks about those short steps in between more than me. And so sometimes I want to get like the cart before the horse, I guess. But part of my vision for our company is eventually wanting to expand those services beyond autism and be able to reach the system involved youth. That's really a passion of mine. Unfortunately, here in Mississippi, right, there's a lot of barriers to that. In fact, in Mississippi, we are put in this box where you only serve individuals with autism, which I have a lot of experience in that. And there is a need there. And I don't ever want to shut that door, but I kind of want to expand. And so I thought, okay, we're gonna include this into our business plan. We're going to start off with these things. And because I really want to get into this space. And he had to really say, listen, we can't get there yet. We're not even bringing in a bunch of revenue. You need to be in a better position before you can even, leverage anything to open those doors. And so you have to start somewhere. And so initially, I wanted to kind of push and say, well, I really want to get into these spaces, but he's kind of the voice of reason all the time. So eventually he was able to reason with me, which is good. But I think those sorts of things and really understanding each other and making sure that if you can't have the discussion in a way that's, calm and collect and respectful, you should not have that conversation at all. But we've done really well with being able to have those conversations and being able to voice well, this is the reasoning behind this, So I think that's how we're able to manage those things.
The absence of conflict isn't necessarily like a good sign either, right? Because, sometimes you're not voicing things and then
Sure.
resentment pops up.
Sure.
I know that was in the earlier years. That was a big, we were not, even though he was operations business, I was clinical. We never set job descriptions for ourselves. We never sat clear, okay, this is what you do and this is what I do, because it was just kind of oh, well, I do this, I do clinical, you do business. And so over time that left both of us feeling, I don't want to talk for you, so I'm just going to say me, but you can give your own story. But we've had this conversation before, so that's why I'm saying that, that we felt so burdened. So we were carrying so much individually, right? Oh, I have, I guess similar to maybe running a household, right? I'm doing all of the chores inside, I'm doing all the chores outside. And each person on each side is really feeling resentment. It starts to build and oh, I'm doing all the things. I'm carrying all the things. And then the other person's also feeling that way.
Right.
And we've talked with other couples in business who really that's what drives the wedge, but that's what makes it not last, right? So we talk about making clear, guidelines and clear lists, just like if we were working in company with strangers, right? You're going to have, okay, this is what you take care of. This is what you take care of. This is what, if this topic comes up, then there's a decision between the two of us, really, lining all of that up. So I was just wondering if any of you guys have dealt with just that, mental load and resentment of, or have you clearly been able to, define each other's roles and it's just been fairy tale?
We can speak to this one because that's something we just recently actually walked through with roles and responsibilities. And, just to give a little bit of background on that, in the past, when we were in different careers, I've always been just fully career driven, spending a lot of time on work. And Josh has had more flexibility in his career in the past. And so that naturally led to him taking on more of the household responsibilities. And we had some of that resentment years ago where he felt like he was carrying more load at the house than I was. And that led to some conflict that we had to work through. And then recently in the business, some of those same feelings started to surface. Where I felt like I was having to manage him. And again, not wanting to speak for him, but we've had these conversations as well recently, and he can give his perspective on it. But we started to have just that underlying conflict where it wasn't really out in the open. We weren't visibly arguing or fighting, but those familiar, issues were starting to come up. And so we had to have those conversations about, like, I feel like I'm having to manage you. This is your part of the job. I shouldn't have to be following up on these things. And so we had to make the decision of how do we navigate that? We did hire an executive assistant to help mitigate some of that because we needed that middle person who basically could help manage his day-to-day to-do list. And it wasn't me having to make sure he checked the boxes.
I think it was a product of, just our different personalities, our skill sets, skill deficits, to be able to continue and, get along and not ultimately, resent each other to levels that interfere with the business or marriage. It was a decision, a hire that we had to make, at least for a period of time. Where we've been in this, we've doubled in size every year. So it hasn't slowed down. And so we always feel like we're in that, you have to spend more to make more. I don't, simpler way to put it. And you're always on the edge. So there's always more work to do. So for me, the struggle of, prioritizing things, whether they're the immediate needs or if I'm looking long term, having somebody other than my wife to sit down with me once a week and just go through the busy work and help me either do it or delegate it, rather than just kicking it until, somebody's, the debt collector's calling or, it's asking for money back, or whatever it is, it's something on the HR side, where missing employment records. We found a solution.
I highly recommend that. A lot of times we feel like, we don't have the money to hire someone, especially in the beginning stages. Mm-hmm. As soon as you can, I really, honestly, truly, wholeheartedly believe that should be the first hire that you make is an executive assistant or something of the sort, right? Yeah. To really be that person to just help with the day to day, just the quality of
life. I think, right?
We didn't.
It's super helpful. We didn't do it
until this business.
Yes,
until a year ago, and.
We tried several times, and we hadn't found that right person
over the last few years.
But shout out to Mel. She is amazing.
So now we have that perfect, and we also, I have to say, it's not necessarily on that the other people weren't the right people. Maybe a couple didn't have quite the right work ethic we were looking for, but it took us knowing what we needed. Right?
Yep.
We needed to understand what we needed from that role so we knew what skill sets to look for. And so, I highly recommend that. Oh, that's so awesome. I'm glad that that's working for you guys.
I think for us, our beginning was rocky because we got married in 2018. We started the business in 2019 and then pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So especially being a home-based provider mostly, that was just, as you can imagine, that was just pure chaos for a while, trying to figure out what we're doing and the CDC guidance and the schools shutting down and what do we do about all of our home sessions. So stress levels astronomically increased.
Yeah.
And, I had just quit my job too. So it was an intense time. And I think for us, we both tend to really lock into a problem when it happens, and then we have trouble shutting our brains off for it. Mm-hmm. So we ended up just being completely focused on like any boundaries that we had, which is an issue for us to begin with, is having any boundaries at all with work. But I mean, it just intensified to the point where that was all we were doing, all we were talking about 24/7. So I think our connection suffered for a while. And then it didn't come out in conflicts about the business. It came out in just general heightened irritability here and there. And it took us a while to kind of recognize that was what was going on. So just growing our self-awareness of like, this isn't actually about 4 dirty dishes sitting next to the sink. This is weeks worth of stress and being in constant firefighting, problem solving mode that just manifested itself in this irritation about the dishes. So having to just really be aware of ourselves in that and have conversations early.
Yeah, we're both working remotely from the same small space. We are around each other all the time, putting in both of us putting in 12-hour days. And like, there have been so many times where like neither of us, like, we haven't left the house for a week. Like, we've just both been like, we've imprisoned ourselves in this space because of the business.
How do you shut it off, right? Because this is something that we struggled with and still struggle with to a certain degree. But like, especially if you're doing in-home, your office is in your home. Is there like, do you find that you're able to shut it off? Or I know an issue that I had was April would say, okay, we're going to shut it off. And I'd be like, no, we're not. Right. And so
he would get so mad at me.
And so like that was because I'm hard-headed and stubborn. I would then immediately say, no, we need to talk about this thing. Right. So like, have you found an effective way to shut it off when it's really hard to find that boundary?
I think for us, that's something that we're still learning, is how to shut it off. There are some days where we have a clinic, and we share an office in our clinic, just space reasons. So there's some days where we are in the clinic together and we're in the office and we can just problem solve and talk through things and have meetings and all of that. And those days it's easier to shut it off once we get home. But then because I am clinical and he's business and we operate not only in our clinic, but we also operate in schools. I'm all over the place most weeks. And so it's not until we get home that we have the opportunity to talk about some of the things. So we're trying to learn that balance. I think our biggest temperature gauge on that is how our kids are responding. So like if our kids are around and they are making comments like, well, all you're doing is working, or, you're just talking about work again, that's what's been our temperature gauge. We have a 13-year-old and a almost 7-year-old. So they're pretty aware of what's happening. They are very in tune to our conversations. And so I think that helps us keep a temperature check on when we are bringing it home too much or talking around things that really they shouldn't hear. They start to ask questions. And I'm like, when did you hear that? And they're like, you were just talking about it in the car on the way home, So that's been our guide. We're still trying to figure that out. We have definitely not mastered that part of it. We try our best. We try to be as self-aware as possible in those situations. But I think for right now, our kids are our temperature check on when we've brought too much to the dinner table or to the car ride or whatever that might be. And we try to go ahead and shut it off and then pick it back up whenever it's a healthier time for us to talk about it.
I think John and I are probably in the same space as Jessica and Josh in terms of like not really having a lot of boundaries just yet. And I think part of that too is the phase that we're in, because right now, we haven't completely taken off with the business. And so, I mean, we're just about to really get started. And so, because we're both still currently working in other areas. And so it's like, we both work all day. And then by the time, he gets home and then I'm there, we're in the process of building it. And so we're talking about, hey, this is what we need to do for this. And so a lot of our free time is kind of taken up by that. And I will say that we've spent a lot of our marriage having to work a lot and work hard. And so sometimes it is hard to separate and kind of create a boundary. I don't even know where the boundary is. We haven't even said like, okay, this is the boundary.
Right.
I will say that probably over the last couple of months, I would say we've tried to take more intentional pockets of time. And it's not even on a set schedule or anything. It's just, hey, you know, let's go and like have some coffee together or go have a lunch or something. We also have a 10-year-old at home. I wish he was more of a gauge than he is. I think he really understands the position that we're in right now. And so he's very understanding. So he doesn't like harp on us at all. But I think also too, with him, I've really tried to, on the daily, carve out little pockets of time that is just for him, 100% for him. And so I think he sees that. And so that kind of helps. Now, do I hope that we kind of create clearer boundaries in the future? Absolutely. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. That's what over the years, and it's changed depending on what stage of business and what business that we've been in. There were times where we had absolutely no boundaries, and it was kind of coming out into those like fights about random things, right? Like Jess was talking about just it, and then realizing how much resentment and animosity were underneath it. And then we went through quite a few couples counselors, and we just never could quite find, it took us a while to find the right one that understood how to support two individuals working at home together, living together, running a business out of our home together. Like, there's a lot of, I totally, like Chris and Jess, like we could probably sit down and have some coffee and like talk for hours and hours and hours on like all of what our life's parallels with that. And then there were like in the beginning, especially those first couple of years, I think you know, going into it, you don't exactly know how much it's going to be, but you do know you're going to be putting a lot of time into those first couple of years. And that's where with just business owners in general within our community here, we have to remind them that that's when you have to take that you have to check in, because if you're running your business at the same rate and intensity that you are year 1 and 2 and year 5 and 6, you're not going to last. Like it could potentially run yourself into the ground. Yeah. That's another conversation. But things like Stephen would wake up at 2 a.m. Oh, that's one of his favorite stories to tell, but like wake up at 2 a.m. like in a panic, and he would be like, did you check the timesheets or like Aetna, whatever. It was typically around billing or denials. Did you look at those denials? And it was like this, like 2 o'clock in the morning, like all like someone's breaking in the house kind of energy, like, oh, hurry, it's danger. It's an emergency.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
like many times. Yeah. And that was not cool, man. But I had my own things. Like I would come to him, like saying like, I don't know what to do about these, like, just clinical kinds of things, especially while we were still building our clinical team before we had a clinical team to bounce those things off of. That really helped me a lot when we hired our clinical director. That was a huge step, because then I was able to kind of take on the, more of that like owner role a little bit more and put my ideas out there and have someone to help me carry out those ideas and put those things in place. But then recently, we have an almost 11-year-old, and he knows he gets it, right? He's a little entrepreneur himself. Yeah. So he's lived the life for his entire life. And, but he is really good at advocating for himself. So, he'll step in from time to time. But our most recent thing is that from 5 to 6 is family time, and we try not to do, and that's just been like this school year. And it doesn't even work every week. There are some weeks where that goes out the window, but we try to come back to it, right? When we find that we're like, going too far, we try to bring ourselves back to that, 5 to 6 anchor. And then we like put our phones away, play games. He's into board games right now and things like that. Or we play Mario Kart together as a family, or we go somewhere, go for a walk or whatever. And that seemed to really, because we were starting to get the behavior from our child. That's how we would know that we were doing too much work, is because we would get some pretty severe outbursts, and we realize, okay, this is us. So we have to make sure, because that's, of course, right, what happens when this behavior escalates, like when he's like in a rage, well, mommy and daddy have to both stop work at the same time and completely attend to you,
Right.
And so we were like, I learned way longer down the road than we probably should have, especially being in this field. But we learned that, okay, we have to like plan this like family time before the behavior escalates to really have this time. And that's worked. But I urge anyone who's listening, who is, in business together with their partner is to like, you don't have to come up with all the boundaries. You don't have to have all the rules. And even if you do, they're not going to last. They're not going to be the same throughout the entire longevity, the entire journey of your career, right? They're going to shift and change. So even if you just come up with one, even if it's like, okay, this week we will carve out a 30-minute pocket where it's not work related. And if you don't have kids, right? It's like something that the two of you do that's not work related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I could give myself any advice, previous Stephen. Yeah. What would I do if I was having panic attacks and like get your stuff together would be right? Like start working on yourself would probably be my advice, right? And I think that is something that I have tried to do, right, over the past 10 years, is really work on my own communication skills and getting what I needed, where I'm not completely 100% focused on making money.
So that brings me to money. So it's really like, it's a lot, right? Like, we're in this together. And this is the paycheck. I know that like for some of you, like you're still working in the other job as you're starting this, but this is typically the end result or the goal is that no one's working extra jobs. You're all in this together. But then that brings like, okay, this pays our bills. This is like the financial stability of our family, not to mention all of our
your eggs are all in one basket.
Staff's family.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with insurance audits and payroll things. Like when we first started, we didn't understand that once you hit a certain level of payroll, like the taxes go up and not like, and so when we started, we had like a year. We have a year's worth of living expenses.
More than
that.
Yeah.
We were set. We were good. That lasted 3 months?
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So no.
We didn't know, like I didn't know what I was doing on the insurance billing, right? Like I taught myself. That was a horrible idea. We did get through it, but yeah, that was.
So how's that money stress going for you? There's a lot of sighs. That
is our life.
Yeah. So that was my background was most recent kind of step in my career was financial director at our church. We had school, after school daycare, over 100 employees, 400 or 500 kids on campus, a large organization for our area. So I had experience with, dealing with, multiple $1 million budgets. So that wasn't the piece, that ever gave me pause. But, as you grow and payroll turns from, a biweekly from, 4 figures to 5 figures.
Yeah.
And
6.
Carry that on. So and just knowing kind of that we're trying to, we got to have these admin positions because we'll never, like you said, we'll never like take it to the next step. We'll never we'll bury ourselves if we don't. So finding that balance of, just breaking even till we can get it to that next step. Cause you're always right on the edge. I feel like, of having the billable hours and the right amount of staff to cover that.
So that you don't burn out the direct care staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's the tightest of tight ropes of where my mind lives.
Well, I feel like you get that really good balance. Like we had what I felt like was the perfect balance, and then insurance comes in and Medicaid hits you with a percent rate cut, or Blue Cross Blue Shield comes in and hits you with a 25% rate cut, and so that balance, that scale tips the other way when you've got it right there on the edge of where you're taking care of your people, not burning them out, investing back into your staff, still paying your bills, but then one little unexpected financial thing can just flip those scales so fast. And it's hard to manage those moments without going completely upside down, still wanting to build a good savings so that you can weather those storms and survive those, but feel like you just struggle to get on the other side of that scale.
I think for us, it's a lot of the initial costs that kind of sneak up that I didn't really know about. Because again, I spent a decade as a clinician and not really thinking about those things at all. Fortunately, once we get going, my husband also has experience in managing multi-million-dollar budgets. So that's a plus, because I have zero experience in that. But the sneaky costs that have come up that I wasn't aware of. And then I got to tell him, and he's like, well, why didn't you tell me about this? You didn't tell me this was going to come up. I'm like, I didn't know. And I'm really sorry. So, a lot of that has been kind of difficult to navigate. We're navigating it, but it's, you don't know what you don't know until you're there.
Where do I start?
That's why I looked at you.
I know. Gone from having a couple thousand, starting the business and having a couple thousand in the bank for our 6 months of expenses and 6 months of expenses for our first staff in case we never get paid. We'll go for 6 months and see what happened, to a couple months ago. Was expecting audit results from one of our funding sources, and I was really stressed out. We decided to go out to a store, and I get the results as I'm pulling into the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you go in, I need a minute. And they're so wrong, and I had to hire a lawyer. They violated state law in their response and just decided to make up rules that don't exist, and had to hire a lawyer at my own expense and fight that. And we still don't have results. And I'd be lying if I'd say it's not stressful, because it is.
And I think too, when you were saying, Tasneem, that expense came up, and then you had to let him know. And there's that there was that extra piece of emotional, or I don't know, it's emotional, just the fact that you're working with your romantic partner, your life partner, it's not just your business partner. I don't care. If some people say you can separate the two, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. There's no way in this world. Our brains don't work that way. Yeah. We can't compartmentalize to that extent. Maybe you think you are, but there's some kind of subconscious thing that's still happening there, right? Yeah. And so it's complicated. And I think that's where the difference is, whether you're in business with your spouse or your life partner is different than you and a fellow BCBA that you worked together for 10 years were oh, let's go start off, and we work well together. Let's start a company together. I'm sure there's some, if you're with a friend, but it's not the same level, because those stressors are just deepened. And so it becomes, sometimes it can become a personal attack, or a personal, it just complicated. And then, finances in a marriage are one of the top reasons for divorce, right?
Anyway, yes.
And so then you land secure. You're in business with all of these nuances together, and then the finances of it, and even decisions such as how much are you going to pay your staff, what what position, like who are you going to hire? Like, are we going to do admin stuff? No, we can't afford it. And who makes that final say? I know for us, I'm going to go like really personal here, but I was like, okay, well, Steven gets the final say, like, cause he's the business. He knows the business, and kind of went to more of a traditional wife and husband role right there for a little while, where it's like, okay, you do the money. And then it just kind of landed there. And then it was just a thing. He takes that part of the responsibility. And then it wasn't until, not that long ago, a few years ago, maybe, that really understood what burden that put on him, that he was having to carry all of that. So then, like, trying to learn what I can contribute to that.
It gets really personal really quick, right? And it's like, how dare you spend that money without talking to me? And like all that stupid, right? Like all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it turns into this almost like, oh, I'm the boss and you're not. And right, dude, we're like 50-50 here, right? And it's really hard to separate those things where it doesn't turn into this, you're a bad person, no, you're a worse person, right? And that game, it's really difficult to, and I think, again, that goes back to, we both really did a lot of work on each other, and then came,
individually.
Yes,
not each other.
Sorry,
but our own self.
Well, I mean, maybe that too, but and then we came back together and worked on us as a group, and I don't know that it would have worked any other way.
Well, I think too, I mean, I'm 48, and I think there's some just life lessons and just learning as you grow and as you age and as you do life together. But I do feel like being in business together and being married just like throws gasoline on that, accelerates
it just makes those cracks, those tiny little cracks, even bigger, right? Like it just, yeah. Same with having a kid, right? Like you think you're in agreement, and then you're like, whoa, wow, we really don't agree on this thing, do we? Right? And then both of you are super no, I'm totally right here, you're out of bounds, right? And so dealing with those can be, having a business makes that terrible.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yes.
It's
and
really
so
hard.
like I think one thing that I wish we would have done, very similar to an admin, but have some kind of a mentor that could have said, okay, like your way, you've gone off the deep end, Steven, right? Like we got to focus back. I think that could have been very helpful for us.
Like a mediator kind of?
Yeah, just a third party,
not
trusted.
Not necessarily like
a therapist.
The therapist was just trying to dig down to, we just needed to fix things. We didn't need to dig into things. No, I'm just joking. But no, like somebody who has an understanding of how to
the
help.
business that can help us navigate these difficult situations where we seem to just not be able to, like there's an impasse, right? Yeah, I think that could have been very helpful. Yeah. Which is why I recommend it now.
Yeah,
right?
we do. Yeah. Well, that's how we built this business, is on all the mistakes and all the lessons that we learned running our AByay business, and we're able to use that and apply that and help people now. But, so what lessons have you learned the hard way? What lessons have come out of this so far? And, if there's any stories anyone wants to tell.
I think kind of what you guys were saying is making sure you have a mentor. For us, we went through a really, really tough part of our marriage about 5 or 6 years ago. To a point I honestly didn't know for a little while if we were going to make it through or not. And it was unrelated to being in business together. And we both went through counseling individually and then together. I mean, I don't think we would be at this point running a business together with this much success if we hadn't fixed those issues early on. And so, those were lessons that we learned for our marriage on how to communicate, because we did not communicate well, like a few years ago. And through counseling, that's how we learned to communicate with each other. That's how we learned each other's styles of communication, when to push in, when to back off. So that was one of the lessons that we learned kind of prior to opening the business. Since opening the business, definitely having somebody with at least slightly more experience than you that can give you advice. For us, that's been someone in North Carolina in the AByay world who has been running their company a little longer than we have. And so when we've had insurance questions, when we've had things come up, being able to go to them has been really, really great and helpful. But then also for us, a big lesson learned the hard way was we wanted to make everybody happy. We wanted to make our staff happy. We wanted our employees to be happy. We wanted our families to be happy, to the point that we didn't have boundaries with staff or families. And we are Christians, and everything that we do is guided by our faith. And sometimes I think we almost let that be the reason why we were too soft in some areas, because we felt like if we set boundaries or said no or did these other things, it was like we weren't being a good enough Christian, or not giving people enough grace, or not being kind enough or compassionate enough. And that led us into some really, really difficult moments in our first year of business. When you said you survived your first year, we barely survived our first year. And we ran into some employee issues, and we ended up in, situations with attorneys because of it. And it was really because we didn't have those boundaries. And we just tried to make people happy. And so that was a hard lesson learned, that boundaries are not bad. Saying no is healthy. And like you said, conflict is healthy. The absence of conflict means that, something's suppressed there somewhere. And for us, we still try not to just rule with an iron fist under policy, but we've had to tighten up policies. We've had to put some systems in place that not everybody liked. And it was hard. It was really, really hard, but I think we've been better for it. And we have a really high retention rate of staff compared to the rest of the industry. And I think a lot of that is because we are kind, we are compassionate, we try to value people, but we've stopped letting our fear of not making people happy run our business. And so I think that's been one of our biggest lessons learned.
Being aware of your overly empathetic nature, and finding those limits to that, the reasonable limits, not to go without empathy, but to just understand that it's a business, and people are going to, staff are going to go on hard times. They're going to miss a lot of work. Some of them are going to miss too much work to, remain employed. As nice of people and as good of staff as they may be, learning that there are healthy limits, and it doesn't make you a terrible person.
Yes, I think that's like there's almost a cultural thing there with Christians in the South, right? We have to be nice. We want everyone to be happy. We want to keep everyone happy. And holding those boundaries and learning that boundaries are okay, and how to almost that what I talk about a lot, clear as kind, right? Like the being able to state what your expectations are and hold accountable, even when it's hard and uncomfortable. Yes, Josh. I mean, that's so real. And whether you're running business as a married couple or not, those are the lessons that can be really hard to learn. But once you get to that point, not that we all ever get to that, we're all still learning and growing and all, but once we start to understand what that feels like and what that looks like in practice, it can actually end up helping our staff and helping to keep the majority on and keeping them happy, if you will, right?
It can also lead the exact opposite, right? Where you're like, dude, don't tell me. I've heard this story from 15 other staff, right? Come on. So there is that balancing act of where it doesn't leave you cynical and jaded, right? So that is a struggle. That's a really difficult line, tightrope, right? So yeah.
In some of those situations, and now when we're looking at it, especially with staff, what we stop to ask ourselves is, where is our heart? Is my heart softened in this situation, or is it hard in this situation? Am I making a knee-jerk reaction because I've experienced this before and it didn't go very well? And so we have to do heart checks, because that is a big part of who we are, and one of our biggest parts of our mission is that we value people. And so we really have to examine our hearts. And is this a reaction because this went so bad before in a similar situation? Or are we keeping a soft enough heart that we can see it from an empathetic view, but still with boundaries and systems in place?
Kind of my thought is we've learned to, have our knee-jerk reactions that day in the moment, that night when we, finally get a chance to come together, but to not act on those. But on the flip side is once you put too many sleeps in between the problem, then you just hope it goes away.
Yeah.
And we found ourselves, there's a sweet spot of let's not necessarily, our first instinct, but if we feel the same way the next morning, let's act on it.
Have a hard conversation.
Yeah.
So I think for me, we obviously haven't really delved in deep enough yet to have hard lessons learned in business just yet. We've learned some smaller ones in the beginning phases. I will say that similar to Jessica and Josh, a lot of the hard lessons that I can think of that, really were learned the hard way for me that I'm glad happened before is being able to communicate, because I had a tendency to just take on all the things, especially when I was working and taking care of the home and, going through my doctorate and all that, and not really communicating anything. Just, I'm just going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to take on everything, and then not say anything until it just boils over. and then that never really ended well. And so being able to, realize that, hey, that's not a good way to have a partnership, not in marriage, and certainly now not going into business, that would not work. So being able to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, sharing, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what we need. And being able to work together instead of just trying to take on everything just myself.
The biggest thing between the business and the relationship and lessons learned is that I feel like I was a good clinician, and then you open a business and you're not a clinician anymore. So you got to run out and learn leadership and OBM and business skills. And I feel like some of that has helped with the relationship too. And then, with Jess taking HR, a lot of people, and I struggled with this, where you're doing everything. You've got your hands in every single pot, everything that's happening. And then it's not possible to have that level of control anymore. And you've got to back out. You have only so much time in the day and only so much brain power. And I struggled with that, and people struggle with that. But, if I micromanage Jess doing HR, that was going to be a problem. So it was easy for me to back out of HR. Jess is coming to me with should I hire this person or this person? And I'm instead of being oh, yes, you should definitely hire this person. It's I don't know. You did the interviews. You tell me which one you want to hire.
Right.
So I did learn to delegate and back off and be more comfortable with less control because of that.
And I think that goes back to what Jessica and Josh were saying in the beginning, right? With some of those admin tasks where you were feeling like you need to micromanage, and Josh, and then you guys brought in the assistant to kind of help with some of those tasks and keeping things going.
I think and again, it probably is the same as with marriage and parenting, right? Those reoccurring cycles that you get into. If we can avoid those, right, where we have somebody that can kind of take that stress off of our plate and we can afford it, well, why don't we do that?
In your journey so far, I don't know, has there been any let's talk about some joy. We've been talking about a lot of hard stuff, which there is a lot of it. But what's some joy that has shown up along the journey as well? I know there's, you guys were saying, Jessica and Josh, about realizing that you're actually getting to have more family time come out of this and a little bit more freedom in your schedule. But yeah, let's talk about some joy. Any stories?
I think, at least from my perspective for now, really, we're still in the transition phase. But there's a couple of things. One, I think we are going to be able to make more time for family and be able to really get on a very similar schedule because, for years, my husband has put a lot of work in at his job. And so the vision is that, we'll transition into this together and that he won't need to do that anymore. And so that'll take a lot of weight off of him and we'll be able to build something together that really means something. The other thing that has really brought me a lot of joy is learning how much he understands my passion and how much he understands my vision. I'm just going to get emotional. But he really, truly I never really understood how much he understands and how much he sees what my vision and values are and him being able to help me get there. Yeah. And so that has been really wonderful.
I think for us, I don't want to paint a picture that life is just perfect and there's no hard times, because that's not the case. But when we really reflect on it, what brings us joy is that we are in this together. We're sharing the same goals. We're sharing the same vision. Our schedules are now so much more aligned. And we enjoy one another. We enjoy working together. Like he said, and like we were saying earlier, our kids, we get so much more time with our family, as crazy as that sounds. And even our family who's not, we don't have any family right here in our area. They're all at least an hour and a half away. And so from their perspective, they're like, y'all work too much. Y'all do too much. And, you're working yourselves in the ground. But we're like, this has been a realization that we just had within the last couple of months, is that our kids, when we worked for other people, our kids were in daycare and after school from the time they woke up until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. We did not see our children. We did not get to parent our children until after 6 o'clock at night. And that's such a small window of time. They were doing homework, at an after school program, and they were in daycare, and it just, they did not get to see us really as parents, except for that little small, 2-hour window at nighttime. And now we're able to pick our kids up from school every day. We are able to help them with their homework. We're able to spend time with them on the weekends. Whenever we had opposite schedules, he worked in ministry. And so his schedule was Sunday through Thursday and several nights a week. So even on the nights that we did have, it was usually either me solo parenting or us just not really being able to parent together. And then on the weekends, we might have had Saturdays together if there wasn't a special event going on at the church. And now we get our whole weekend together. We get to have a lot of those traditional family values that are really, really important to us that we didn't get to experience when we were in separate careers. So for us, that really means a lot. We're also living in our dream location. We live at the beach. We live near the water. I can look out this window that's right beside me and see the Intercoastal Waterway right now.
Yes.
And, it's not because we're making a ton of money or we're super rich. We still live a pretty modest lifestyle, but we are in a place that brings us joy and brings us peace. And we would never have had that had we not stepped out in faith and just taken that very first step to say, you know what, let's just do it. And so just the impact it's had on our family and the growth that we've seen together, the joy in our marriage and how we get to raise our kids is just so different. It doesn't mean there's not hard times. There are definitely hard moments, but I would say that brings us the most joy. That's what we are really most proud of, is that we're creating this different lifestyle that would not have been possible in our previous careers.
Yeah, I think it's similar for us, because I have no idea what would have happened if we would have never started the business and stayed at our old jobs. But yeah, we've got mentioned we have a 14-month-old, and he's amazing. And I don't know if we would have been able to afford it or have it or have the time or anything like that. So I'm happy the way that it's worked out. And our agency is somehow single-handedly increasing the birth rate in Pennsylvania because
that's awesome.
all of our staff are having babies.
Yeah,
it's
totally. There's some, we joked before, don't drink the water there unless you want to, baby.
Babies are great. I think that it's a similar for me, at least. Like I was working, with my job, I was half the time I was on nights and then half the time I was on days, and I was doing like 50-hour weeks, and then I would have to go in for training on my days off, and it was just a lot. And I hated nights. Nights were terrible. And so I think having that flexibility, there's a lot of work to do, but I get to decide when I do that work. I think that just having that level of control, because I'm a control freak, I think was very nice. Right. And I'm working on something that benefits me, right? Versus working on something that maybe benefits me by getting a small raise eventually. Do you know what I mean? It's just different.
You have more like,
it's kind of like what I think of like renting versus home ownership. You know what I mean? Like I'm investing in myself and my future versus somebody else's, right? So there was that. And I also think, looking back on it now, all of that hard work that we did, I think it definitely helped our relationship, right? And now coming out on the other side of it, it definitely, I can see the benefit of doing it. And if I had to do it over again, I would do it over again, 100%. I think it was just the amount of freedom and flexibility that we got. You can't get in a regular 9-to-5 job, right? Then after that 9-to-5 job, you have the hour and a half of drive time, right? Especially in the DC area, right? We had friends where, they would do their regular job and they wouldn't get home till 7:00.
Well, yeah, their kid would be in daycare until 5:30,
totally.
and then they would have a nanny come and pick their kid up from daycare until they could like get to the commute home. And then like sometimes their nanny was putting their child to bed, and their child was asleep before they got home.
I remember when I finally quit my job, the best thing was not having to wear socks. And I refused to wear socks for like a year. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not putting socks on. So like that was like the best part of it. So yeah, just again, that level of freedom and control over your own destiny and being able to make something. And, it was good.
Yeah, I mean,
it was stressful.
And it was totally hard. There was a lot of hard. But yes, I agree that, it helped shape us to who we are today and how we show up for each other today. And I don't take for granted 1 minute that I've been able to be more present in my child's life than I would have otherwise. And I mean, we have pictures, they popped up on my time thing earlier of like, when we moved into our office space, when we opened the clinic, right? There was Willis with his little sippy cup and little onesie outfit, like going through the halls, right? And like, he was like, 2 chairs at my desk and like in my office, and we would scooch them together and make a little place for him to like lay down, whatever, And so I was like, wow, that's really cool. And
in no other world would we be able to do that.
He didn't know a life with you working.
No.
Because you would outside of the home kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we have to explain to him why some of his friends go to daycare and why their parents work and they can't do certain activities, right? Because that's just not a life he knows. Not that it's a bad life, because that's for some people too.
Right.
So the growth that we've had in it, but also I think being able to pour into our staff, and because what brought me into the field was being able to help children, right? And children with special needs. And like my focus was always early intervention. But then like, and being able to support the parents when I was like working cases, but then when it became our own place, we were able to make some of those decisions of how we're going to support the families and how we're going to support our staff. Kind of like there were some hard lessons there too, like similar to Jessica, Josh, of what that really looked like and how to do it. But we did have that ability, and we had the privilege of growing and building a really amazing team that we all helped each other float through 2020. We were probably the strongest we had ever been about the end of 2019 within our team, and the support and how we were learning to support our team, not just in how they show up at work, but in their whole lives, right? Like, And so we were able to really ride that through 2020, as hard and horrible as that year was. We kind of had that to help get us through. So those were some of my joys, being able to spend more family time, have flexibility, but also being able to decide how we poured into our staff and how we supported our learners. So, all right. Well, does anyone, as we close today, does anyone have any last words or words of wisdom for anybody, or any stories they didn't get to share so far today?
I'll say one thing and then I'll pass it over. One thing, you're probably going to be second guessing yourself all the time, right? You're like, that's something you don't know what you're doing, right? And so that's a normal thing. Anybody listening to this, right? But trusting your gut, I think, is something that I have gotten better at, and that first instinct is kind of pretty accurate, right? I think like you mentioned, Josh, don't knee-jerk react to it, right? Respond to it. Take a little bit of time.
Practice that pause.
Exactly. But don't ignore that, because that's really important. And I found that very effective on hiring, especially.
I think we talked a little bit about like the downsides of not having any boundaries, and that's definitely something that like we need to work on. Like there's very little boundary between the personal us and the business us. But on the other hand, we're both working all day, and often we're in like the day-to-day stuff. But then, 8:00 at night when we're sitting down for dinner, then we'll bounce like big picture stuff off of each other. And we'll have time to like sit down and reflect, and like it's a detriment to the personal, but it's a benefit for the business. Mm-hmm. And I have someone that understands everything that I'm going through, understands most of the details of the problems that we're having, and we can just bounce ideas about the business off of each other. And I feel like I'm supported, and I'm not like running everything by myself.
Talking shop at home outside of work, where like it's a bad thing. And as you were saying that, Chris, like to the detriment, I was like, but maybe it's not. Maybe we're like criminalizing that, because, we're doing this business. You guys are doing this business together because you enjoy it, because you want to. So, as long as both partners. I mean, it's better than
coming home from work and complaining about somebody at work, right? Like, honestly, again.
I don't know. I was just, you helped me see it in a different perspective, in a different light of, well, hold on a minute. Maybe it's not a bad thing to be talking big picture ideas at 8:00 across the table, especially if it's something you both enjoy, and it's like a way of connecting and growing together. So anyways, just wanted to say that.
Yeah. I like how you presented that too, because you get to dream together.
Yeah.
That gives you hope for that future of like, we're doing this because we're going to get to this next step, or we want to see these next things for our business. I'm on the same boat. I really like how you presented that, Chris, because it helps you dream together, and it helps give that hope beyond just your day to day. I think the other thing too that, I would want people to know or to think about is not comparing yourself to other people in the field or in the industry. That's been hard for me. And something that I've struggled with a little bit, but I'm seeing the value in the way we do things. And it's hard to look at other AByay companies that maybe are popping up, 5, 6, 7 clinics all across the state, and look like they're bringing in lots of money, and they're serving lots of families, and they have these huge staff. And for us, I can lose sight of what's important, of what is currently in our hands and what we're trying to steward, if I try to compare our business model to what other people are doing, because our business model is slightly different than the average AByay company. And so for me, I can get stuck in comparison. So my advice, I guess, to other people would be like, don't get stuck in comparison and trying to make your mission and values and your business model match or look like somebody else's, because then it's not the right thing for you. that's a piece of advice I would give, and something that I work on, is just not having that comparison, because that can be a thief of your joy. So really being able to steward well what's in your hands and take care of the people that are in your organization, and then the rest will grow and develop as it should, when it should.
One final thought, for me is kind of just processing where we are and what, what we have going on, potentially in the future. So, always have the possibility of, related services, speech OTPT. We have some opportunities, we're in a rural area. So, we're the first AByay clinic in our county. There's only 2 of us now. And that, that trend kind of goes in line with other related services. There's just not many of them. So there is, there's opportunity. We have visions, to fulfill some of those needs when we can. But what it has led us to is, getting this business that we have, getting the administrative people in place where we can take a week vacation and leave a laptop at home. But taking that even further to where we can set our sights on a nonprofit entity that serves, a similar clientele, but takes that pressure off of, insurance regulations, the living and dying by revenue, to where we can actually go do something like that our heart really wants to do, that can be fun, that can serve a need, and that isn't our livelihood's not staked on it. So the business has given us that opportunity to, even explore and start put wheels into motion. So it can, the business is great, serves the need, it pays your bills, but it also facilitates, future opportunities outside of just, it helps us to extend our reach, outside of just, building a nicer, bigger house closer to the water, which we want to do that.
Stephen and April, you mentioned couples counseling, and I have to admit that we also do couples counseling, and we found that to be very helpful, and also went through a couple counselors that were not a good fit until we found one that was a good fit. And also, the perspective that like most marriages fail and most businesses fail. And if you're in a relationship and you're in business together, then you've set yourself up to be doing things on hard mode. And if you're still in it, you should give yourself a pat on the back.
Absolutely.
I will say that in terms of words of wisdom, I don't have much just yet. We're still really learning. We're learning as we go. I will say that I'm really happy that we've partnered together on this, because instead of just it's almost like living separate lives when you're in separate careers, just because, hey, your career is pretty much your whole life. And so now, going into this next phase where we're going to be building something together and, really trying to carve out our niche. And I definitely agree with Jessica, not comparing yourself with others, trying to think about, okay, well, what do we want to build, and then being able to run with that. So, yeah. And just, I think that it's really beneficial to have him on board, because he really keeps me grounded in a lot of ways, where I would just take off faster than I should, and then I would probably fall on my face. So without him, I don't think I could really realistically do this.
Yeah, we need our partners. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with falling on your face either, though.
Yeah. Sometimes we fall on our face together as partners, exactly. And then we pick each other up as we go. Well, thank you so very much for your time today. I really treasure this conversation. It's been a podcast that's been on our wish list for quite a while.
Yes.
So thank you very much for making it happen. And for those of you listening, we, if you don't already know, have a podcast hotline. So, if you are a couple in business together and you have any more to say, or you have questions, or you're thinking about going into business together with your partner, then, please, leave a question on the hotline. But then we also have launched our AByay Business Leaders Support Group. It started in January and we're super excited about it. We already have 50 people signed up and in the community. And a handful of those people are like already, interacting and having conversations just here in the first few weeks. So we're really excited about that. It's a free space where we meet on Slack. So it's off of social media. And I'm going to be probably on Monday. Well, actually, once this podcast airs, which it will air Valentine's week, we will have the couples chat area within the support group, and it will be just by invite only for couples in business together. And that's just a place for to show up and support each other throughout the month. Like, if you're a couple and you're interested in that,
and share online therapists.
There's so many things we can share with each other, right? And so that, the sign up link for the support group will be in the show notes. And also the phone number to the hotline as well will be in the show notes.
So I don't remember my phone number.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll just put it in the show notes. I don't know that people are listening to this. They're probably not taking down the phone number anyways. And then also as well as, the bios of all the beautiful guests today, will also be in there if you want to learn more about them or, reach out. They've shared their, content, their socials or, with us. And so if you want to reach out to other couples, that are doing business together, then you can, there's that too. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.